Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Steven Kilger. I'm the managing editor at Feed and Grain, and this is our IPPE week. And today we are talking to.
Hi, this is Gina Tumbarello. I'm AFIA's Director of International Policy and Trade.
What does the Biden administration have kind of on the deck for what they want to do with trade policy?
I think it's going to be really interesting, this transition to the new administration. First of all, the new administration is going to have to reevaluate the trade war that we've been in the last couple of years as a whole, and the economic impact that's been caused by those tariffs. Part of that will be reviewing all the aspects of the Trump administration's trade policies towards China specifically, including if and whether China has lived up to their terms of the China Phase 1 agreement. Part of that will be reviewing, obviously, the tariffs that we've imposed on China, as well as consulting with our allies to pull together collective pressure on China. And so as far as China goes, I don't see any changes on policies towards China until we've been able to review the policies of the Trump administration, where we stand now, as well as talking with our allies. Another thing I think we'll start seeing once we move towards new trade agreements is a push towards including greater provisions on labor environment standards, which I think will be a huge change from what we've seen the last 4 years. Even at a recent cabinet meeting, President Biden promised that unions will have a seat at the table for every decision we make in trade policy. So that will be a definite transition for our negotiators. And another thing I thought was really interesting that came out during President Biden's campaign was he mentioned that he pledged to not enter into any new free trade agreement until the administration had invested in Americans and equipped them to succeed in the global economy. So I don't know what that means, but I think that the administration is going to have to put together a strategy for how to approach trade in the broader scheme of where the United States is policy-wise.
Wow, it sounds like they have a big task ahead of them, huh?
I do not want to be in their position.
So, speaking of the trade situation with China, that's really tenuous. What do you kind of see happening there?
So it's interesting when people talk about the Biden administration coming in. Everybody thinks, well, we're gonna see a pivotal shift toward on policy with China. But I think we need to really take a step back and understand that President Biden has demonstrated the same concerns that we've had towards China that we had under the Trump administration. Concerns about subsidies to state-owned enterprises, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, military and human rights concerns. So I don't see the concerns changing. It's how we will approach it. New administration means new tactics. And as I mentioned before, we're talking about moving towards collaboratively addressing China with allies. So moving away from the Trump mentality of unilateral engagement with China and more towards a multilateral approach, leveraging our allies. And to leverage our allies, that's going to be a big part of how our greater strategy of how we as the United States improve our trade relationship overall. For example, some of our allies are already being wooed by the Chinese through trade or economic agreements. So I think about the recently finalized EU-China agreement. Who's going to have greater influence in the end? Is it going to be China? Is it going to be the US? We have a lot of groundwork to cover in recouping that relationship with the European Union alone, let alone the pressure coming from China. Another thing that you'll hear is, under the Trump administration, the U.S. was opposing the next WTO Director General to be the Finance Minister, Okonjo-Iweala. Our allies we can expect them to really push us on that opposition and to drop that opposition and to demonstrate goodwill and commitment to multilateralism. So a lot of work is going to have to be focused on our allies and repairing those relationships in order to leverage them in addressing China. Another way to do that is focusing on finalizing the negotiations with the United Kingdom. That started under the Trump administration, has been stalled since the elections. But moving forward with those negotiations, demonstrating the willingness of the administration, even though there's been a changeover, to commit to that bilateral engagement would go a long way to pull along the United Kingdom as an ally. And then another way would be to, under the Trump administration, we did a bilateral tariff reduction agreement with Japan. If the Biden administration wanted to leverage Japan as an ally when addressing China, one way to do that would be to further engage with Japan, either bilaterally through a phase 2 agreement, or even through the comprehensive and progressive agreement for trade, Trans-Pacific Partnership. Sorry, that's the CPTPP, which is the former Trans-Pacific Partnership that we pulled out of under the Trump administration. So, there are several ways we can engage with Japan as an ally, and there are a lot of opportunities with Vietnam as well, which is part of the CPTPP. And under the TPP, we were really looking for opportunities to bilaterally engage with Vietnam. And so that region is really important, right? China has a lot of influence in that region. So connecting with Japan and Vietnam in a more bilateral way, either bilaterally or multilaterally through this greater regional agreement, would be not just beneficial to the U.S. Economy, but U.S. agriculture as well, and leveraging some more support in addressing China.
Wow, I have no idea how you trade people can remember all those acronyms. It's a tongue
twister, especially when they change the names along the way. The U.S. pulled out and they decided they needed to change the name. So,
what are AFIA's priorities going into 2021 when it comes to trade?
So, number one for us would be obviously encouraging the Biden administration to continue to hold China to the fire on the phase 1 agreement that we completed last year. We have gotten so much out of that agreement, really opened the door for a lot of our industry and members through lifting of the high poultry-derived ingredient ban and the ruminant-derived ingredient ban for pet food, addressing facility registration issues and product registration issues, starting to talk about SPS issues. This was all huge for us. So making sure that we continue to engage with China, and that it's a positive engagement as much as we can, and also recognizing that we still have concerns with China. And then hopefully eventually moving towards tariff reductions. And I think the tariffs that we have on China that the Trump administration put in as a result of the Section 301 investigations, I don't see them going away anytime soon. I think there'll be another way for the Biden administration to continue to leverage China for some movement on our concerns. But if we could get those tariff reductions lifted, then the retaliatory tariffs on our products going to China hopefully would be lifted, and that would be advantageous. It's not helpful to lift all the regulatory and policy restrictions on our products if we still have a tariff hindering us against our competition. Another thing that we'll be focusing on is the Trade Promotion Authority. So that expires in July, which is kind of a big deal. It gives congressional authority to the president to negotiate trade deals. And without that, essentially our trading partners sitting across the table don't really have confidence in our negotiators that what they're saying at the table will be held to, that they'll be held accountable to, that they'll go back to Congress and it'll be an up or down vote. That's kind of what Trade Promotion Authority means. They bring it to Congress. Congress can either say yes or no. They can't come in and redline it. So without a Trade Promotion Authority, it really hinders not just our ability to start new trade negotiations, but to complete ones that we've already started. So to give you a little context, the US-UK trade agreement that we started to negotiate last year, if we want that to be approved by Congress before the expiration of the Trade Promotion Authority, that has to go to Congress by April. And that's just not going to happen, not with the USTR confirmation still pending, and that usually takes a couple months. So recognizing that, how do we demonstrate to the Biden administration the importance of the Trade Promotion Authority, the value that it brings to our negotiators, and the legitimacy of our ability to negotiate with good faith? And to give you a little more context, the last one took 8 years to renew. So that, we don't, if the Biden administration is really committed to helping US businesses export and compete internationally, they really need to spend some time looking at that. And I think that it might be difficult, given all the domestic issues. I'm not sure if they're going to hit trade first year and a half, but we'll be out there championing on behalf of industry and pushing for that. I mentioned the UK and Kenya trade agreements that we were negotiating, advocating for continued negotiations on those, all the benefits that they bring to us, whether it's market access in UK or just the significance of Kenya and opening up that general region in Africa for industry and agriculture. I mentioned potential with the CPTPP and or bilaterals with Japan and Vietnam, and the importance of that opportunity for us to have access to new markets for new products, but also to compete more fairly against our competitors like China and the European Union. And once the Biden administration starts looking towards trade agreements again, and hopefully they will soon, advocating for using USMCA as a model. I understand that was under the Trump administration, but there's a lot of really positive language in there under the sanitary phytosanitary chapter that has commitments that go beyond WTO commitments that could really enhance the way we trade and the way we look at regulatory implementation and basing regulations on science and risk-based assessments. And the last thing, our messaging that we're ready. I mentioned that the Biden administration said that first he wanted to make sure that American businesses are prepared to be in the global environment. Well, we as U.S. feed industry and U.S. agriculture, we are no stranger to exporting. And our industry depends on exports. The growing demand for our products are not going to be in the United States. They're going to be abroad. And in order to meet that audience, we have to find a way to level the playing field. And that's going to be through trade. So we don't want to see a delay in providing those opportunities for industry. We stand ready. We stand, we want to be advocates for trade. We want to support the administration and all their efforts. And that would be our response to that. Let us help be champions for you for trade.
Wow. Well, it sounds like it's going to be a busy 2021 and probably beyond. Huh? But thank you so much, Gina, for taking the time to talk to me and our readers, and continue to look to Feed and Grain for IPPE coverage all week. And hey, thank you guys so much. Appreciate what the AFIA is doing out there.
Thanks, Steven.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.